Okay, we're just preparing to go live. It is setting me up right now to go live on YouTube. It's taking a little while, but hopefully it will be there in a second or two. Greetings, greetings, family. We are live. Sister Shanice in the house. Welcome, welcome to the Sister Shanice Show. Yes, indeed, we are live. We have our brother Leader Mbandaka preparing in the background. I'm absolutely delighted that you are joining us this evening live and direct. In fact, let me get the link so that I can be posting the link to the family members in the background. Yes, it's Ujamma Day. Yes, it is Wednesday. And today is Wednesday, the 14th of August. And I'm absolutely delighted that you are going to be joining us today for what is going to be another awesome, fantastic, blacktastic show. The theme for our conversation today is the rise of racism in Britain. And it's going to be from a Pan-African centered perspective. My line is looking a little choppy. I don't know why. I'm meant to be in one of the countries in the world that's supposed to have, you know, the best internet, etc., etc. But, you know, wherever I am, it seems like dodgy internet follows me. So my apologies, but thank you so much, each and every one of you, for hanging on in there. Because you know that the message that you're going to get from the show today is absolutely going to be worth it. And it's all about the audio. It's all about the message. And as you know, we've got Leader Mbandaka in the house from the Al-Qaeda and Revivalist movement. So it's going to be fire. It's going to be a great, great show this evening. So as you come through the door, please do hit us up in the chat. Let us know that you're there. Let us know where in the world you're viewing us from. Also, as you come through the door, please do give us a thumbs up and give us a like. You know, it'd be absolutely phenomenal to be able to know that you're in the house and you're actually watching live and direct. Now, very, very importantly, family, what I want to remind you of is that we have round 3 of our Black British History course. It's going to be absolutely phenomenal. Yes, it's going to be starting on Monday, the 9th of September 2024, and it's going to run for 6 consecutive strongs. Some say week, we say strong. And it's going to be starting at 7:30 p.m. UK time through to 9:30 p.m. Then after 9:30, we're always around for a couple of hours for a reasoning on what has been delivered, because it's all about reinforcing the learning and also recognizing that there are others who are going to be on the course who are going to bring their knowledge to the table as well. So we always give those who participate in our program the opportunity as well to share their learning, to share their perspective, and to even, you know, bring information or bring a presentation to the program. So it's always a very interesting interactive session. It's going to be delivered by myself alongside Dr. Clyde Winters, the awesome, magnificent historian, anthropologist, linguist, and so much more, Dr. Clyde Winters. So for more information about the course, you can either email me at starlightglobalmanagement@yahoo.com, starlightglobalmanagement@yahoo.com, or you can go to Sista Shanice, sister spelled with an A, S-I-S-T-A, shanice.gumroad.com. And in actual fact, while you're there, you can also get a copy of this wonderful book that I've done for you free of charge, entitled A Tribute to Marcus Messiah Garvey. Anyway, just quickly going back to the Black History course, because, you know, there's something that Ivan Van Sertima said that I just want to draw to your attention here. He said that there is a very profound distortion of African history. He said that almost all of the books that have been written on Africa have been, my sincere apologies, let's just get that off. Now, I've been waiting for that call all day, and he paused just as my show's about to start. So he said that there is a very profound distortion. Get rid of that. Right. Excuse me 1 second. Errol, can you take my phone, please? Ryan was just trying to call. Here's calling again. Sorry, family. Sorry, family. Right, let's get this done. Here we go. Okay, sorry about that, family. As you can tell, it is live. Sorry. Okay, it's going to stop ringing on my computer in just a moment. Hopefully. Okay. Okay, he doesn't know how to accept the calls on my phone. Yep. Sorry about that, family. So, as I was saying, Ivor van Sertima said that there is a very profound distortion of African history. Almost all the books that have been written on Africa have been studies of primitives, of people in small communities who are just barely scratching the soil. People living in jungles, etc. This is what they've been studying and calling basically the entirety of our history. Well, almost the entirety of our history, because the other part of our history that they like to rub in our noses all the time is the single narrative around enslavement, which is only just a fraction of our history. And so the history, that was me saying some of that as well, back to Ivor van Sertima. So the history of Africa has been built upon the lowest common denominator. European history, by contrast, he says, however, is built on their heroes and magnificent achievements. So imagine, on the one hand, when they talk about our history, they're taking it down to the lowest common denominator. But when they talk about their history, they're talking about their heroes and their magnificent achievements and the likes. And so Ivor van Sertima says, so when it comes to African studies, historians and anthropologists have always looked for the worst. And so, family, that is why it's so important that we do the research for our history and that we are the ones that are telling our own stories about our history based on the research that we've found. Because as the African proverb says, until the lions have their historians, tales of the hunt shall always glorify the hunter. Well, our tales, you know, of their story and their version of our history has been told by them for far too long. And so we are changing that, family. We're doing the research and we're coming across some information, family, that is just going to blow you away. Okay, so we want to make sure that you get the true knowledge of our history and who we are. So for those of you who have already registered, I thank you so much. I'm looking forward to meeting you on the course. And for those of you who are thinking about it but yet to register, come on, man. Hurry up. Just cleaning the lens there. Hurry up and join in and join the course. Get signed up. Go to sistashanice.gumroad.com. Get a free copy of the book and also join the course. It would be great to have you on board. Okay, let me go over to admit our special guest for today, who, fingers crossed, is already in waiting in the back room, none other than our own brother, Leader Mbandaka. Let's see if he's in the house. And as he prepares to come forward, yes, he's in the house. Welcome, Leader Mbandaka. Tendai Mari, please take yourself off mute. We want to hear your voice. Welcome to the Sista Shanice platform.
Tendai Mari, my dear sister. Garvey lives.
Messiah lives.
Messiah lives. He live.
Hey live. Hey live. Garvey lives.
Garvey lives.
Family, we need you to join us as we remember Marcus Messiah Garvey this month, his Earth Day month. And, you know, as we often say, we don't die as a people. The only time we die is when we're forgotten about. It's when the future generations don't talk about us anymore. It's only then that we die. But for as long as our name is being called and for as long as we are remembered, we live.
That's
right. Garvey lives.
Garvey lives.
Messiah lives.
Messiah lives. He lives.
Woo! Wow. So we heard the name of Marcus Messiah Garvey, and doesn't he deserve to be remembered, Brother Leader?
Most definitely, my dear sister, because he was the one who was sent among us to answer to our cry, answer to our call, our pain, our suffering, as we cried out for liberation, as we cried out for an ease to the pain and the excruciating pain and suffering of oppression, exploitation, and degradation. This man stood up and spoke into our souls in such a powerful and awesome way. And he gave us what we call the black print. We don't talk about blueprint, we talk about black print for our total liberation. If we study the legacy and the life and the person of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey, we will indeed find in it all that we need to empower ourselves and to guide us towards our total liberation, the glory of Mwari and Muzimmukuru, and the attainment of a much higher quality of African human existence. So we give thanks and praises for the life and legacy of the most eminent prophet and king, whom we honor for 31 days. We commemorate and we honor for 31 days in the month of Mosiah. And indeed, we also name the month Mosiah, for we are the mission and spirit children of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey, and not the descendants of Augustus Caesar, from whom the month so-called August was named. So give thanks and praises. This is the month of Mosiah, and we are on the 14th day of the month of Mosiah. Tendai Mwari.
Tendai Mwari, yes, beloved Leader Mbandaka, just 3 days or so away from the day that our great leader, was born. He was born on the 17th of Mosiah in 1887. And we're going to be celebrating his Earth Day here in the UK. We've got a special event that's happening in partnership with Galaxy Afiwi, the 40th year celebration of Galaxy Afiwi, the only de-brainwashing station. That's the station, family, that you need to look into if you want to be de-brainwashed, if you want to have your mind decolonized, if you want to get back into your African-centered mindset from an economic, political, cultural, educational, every perspective you can think of. The place to go for that Africated knowledge is the Big G Galaxy Afiwi, the only de-brainwashing station. Brother Leader Mbandaka, please let the audience know when they can hear from you live and direct on the Big G Galaxy Afiwi.
Yes, Tendai Mwari, giving thanks and praises. We are blessed to be on Galaxy Radio, the only de-brainwashing station, every Kujichagulia evening. We don't say Monday. We say Kujichagulia, the second principle of the Unguzo Saba. Every Kujichagulia evening from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. Kanamwariada, by the grace of the Almighty. And as we say, we talk it straight and we make it plain to our people. So do tune in, beloved brothers and sisters, because we're always addressing very crucial issues affecting the African people at home and abroad. And when we say at home, we're not talking about the UK, we're talking about Mama Africa. We may live here, we may be domiciled here in the UK, in cold old Europe, but we are not the people of Europe. Our homeland, our motherland is the 13 million square miles of the richest real estate on the planet, the continent of Africa. Tendai Mwari.
Tendai Mwari, Ashe, and as you always say, what a privilege it is to be an African. What an awesome privilege it is to be born an African.
Indeed.
And although we've been born outside of Africa, as you said, our heart, our mind, our spirit is all first and foremost about Africa and the joy of being an African.
As in the words of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey, this is the season of Mosiah, so we quote copiously from the tremendous legacy of Papa Garvey, who says, look to Africa. Let Africa be your guiding star, your star of destiny. Look to Africa. Let Africa be your guiding star, your star of destiny. Tendai Mwari.
Tendai Mwari, what a star, you know, the great man was himself. Family, you know, just drop a note in the chat about what your favorite Marcus Mosiah Garvey quote is or was. In this little book here, if you permit me, Leader Mbandaka, I'm just going to read a couple of pages, and I really want to encourage our family to go and get a copy of this book. It's free for you to download. So you just go to that Gumroad site there, and on the menu, you will find this book. It's a PDF on the site. You can download it free of charge. And share it, because we want the words of Marcus Mosiah Garvey to live on. Yeah, and to be changing and impacting lives. So let me just read a little bit from the book to give you a bit of a flavor, so that, you know, hopefully after this show, you're going to run to the site and go and download it. So just reading here from the visionary leadership of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, the section that talks about Garvey's triumph over adversity. And he says here, or, you know, in the writing I say here, in the inspiring memory of Marcus Garvey, a revered Jamaican national hero and visionary behind the Universal Negro Improvement Association, we find a message that transcends time and resonates with the heartbeat of a movement that shaped the 20th century. As we explore in the chapters of this book of his remarkable life, okay, what you're going to uncover is a legend of redemption, education, self-reliance, purpose, entrepreneurship, community, tradition, and above all, respect. Because Marcus Mosiah Garvey is one of our leaders. He stands, you know, as one of the most exceptional African leaders in history. And I know Leader Mbandaka would agree with that statement. His era, just listen to this, family. When our beloved Marcus Mosiah Garvey came on the scene, yeah, it was an era that was marked by the aftermath of our enslavement. However, Garvey, who fearlessly embraced his love for his race and his people as us as Africans, you know, he wasn't in any way, you know, put off about the situation that we found ourselves in, because our race at the time was marred in the traumatic struggles of post-slavery life. Just imagine rolling out of, you know, 300 plus years of enslavement, what that must have looked like, the sort of condition that we must have been in as a people. Anyway, amidst the backdrop of widespread poverty, hopelessness, and starvation, Marcus Garvey displayed an unparalleled ability to see beyond the grim situation that we were in. He saw beyond those circumstances, family. And look at this, look at the quality of life that we have today compared to what our family had back then. And some of us can't even see beyond the circumstances of today. But, you know, straight out of enslavement, Marcus Garvey could see beyond our present circumstances, and he recognized the untapped potential within his race and became a steadfast advocate for race pride. Imagine someone calling for race pride at a time when, you know, we're impoverished, we've just rolled out of it being enslaved, we probably, you know, didn't even have boots on our feet. Can you imagine, you know, the hopeless situation that we were in? But this man was saying that we should have pride in our race, you know, and he was fostering a vision that surpassed the prevailing hardships that we found ourselves in. So Garvey's visionary leadership emphasized the crucial principles of race first, promoting racial unity, and he was an advocate for racial purity as well, because that really needs to be emphasized today, because we're in a situation today where race mixing is actually being used as a strategy to water down our race. You know, colonialism and their control of the media have indoctrinated a lot of our people into believing that, you know, everything white is right and everything black is awful. So much so, you know, that we're looking for a white savior. We're looking for, you know, everything and anything white to save us instead of looking to ourselves as our saviors. And so, you know, just imagine back then, more than at any time, I would imagine, in our history. You know, if we're looking for a savior, it would have been back then. But he wasn't saying, look to a white Jesus or anybody else to come and save us as a people. He was saying that we must look to ourselves, because he was promoting racial unity. He was advocating for racial purity. And he said that these were essential components for the advancement and empowerment of our people. In the face of adversity, he championed a perspective that looked beyond immediate challenges, laid the foundations for a future for us as African communities where we could thrive and flourish. That is just, you know, the first page. I was going to read a few pages, but I tell you, if I go on any more, I'll be taking us to church, Marcus Garvey's church. So let me just drop that right there for now in your spirit, in the hope, family, that you will pick up a copy of this book and, you know, share it. And so ultimately, we can get a new generation in this dispensation that we're in, where our people are just living the Marcus Messiah Garvey blueprint or black print that he's already laid for us. Okay, so racial pride, race purity, you know, these are some of the important ingredients that he said was necessary for the advancement of our race. And this is the talk of a great man. So who am I, you know, to question, you know, whether or not he's got it right, this great man. Leader Mbandaka, anything to add to that first page?
Yeah, Tendai Mwari. Yes, indeed, my dear sister. Those were awesome, powerful words from the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency, Marcus Messiah Garvey. As I said, he spoke power into our souls, into our hearts. He spoke courage into us. He wanted to inspire in us the spirit of self-determination and self-sufficiency, relying on no one but ourselves as African people for all of what we need to empower ourselves, for all of what we need to redeem our situation, to salvage dignity for our people, self-determination for our people. He wanted us to be masters again of our own lives and of our own destiny. And that's what comes out so powerfully from the reading that he did. But, you know, also with all of that, he wanted us to love ourselves. He wanted us to see purity in our Africanness, to look in the mirror and see nothing but beauty, only beauty in its depth and also on the surface. There's plenty of beauty on the surface, and the beauty on the surface is a reflection of our innermost depth, which is equally gorgeous and lovely, and you know, and just aesthetically pleasing, beloved brothers and sisters. And Papa Garvey wanted us to love what we see when we look in the mirror, and love the essence of how the Creator created us. Tendai Mwari.
Absolutely. Tendai Mwari. Yes, indeed, you know. And if the Creator created us first in his image, you know, what does the Creator look like? Looks like us, you know.
As beautiful as.
As beautiful as his creations, you know. So love thyself and everything that Marcus Messiah stood for. Thank you so much, you know, Brother Leader Mbandaka, for adding that, you know, to the works and the vision and the heart of that wonderful leader. So, Brother Leader Mbandaka, as always, we are just so grateful to you for responding to the call, you know, and for coming to grace this platform and to address our audience who are coming through the doors. I can see some messages coming up, so I will indeed be welcoming our audience in a short while. But first of all, let's welcome our beloved Leader Mbandaka. For those who don't know you, let me ask you to just briefly introduce yourself to our audience.
Oh, Tendai Mwari, give thanks and praises, my dear sister. And I Thank you again. I say Tatenda, Medasi Papa. I say Oshe. I say to you, Asante Sana. Thank you, thank you, thank you in the mother tongue, in the various mother tongues, for entrusting me with the minds and the souls of your many and growing listenership. I am humbled and I am honored, and I respect the work that you are doing, my dear sister. I love you for what you do for our people. I hail you, my dear sister. I bow to the divine in you that drives you to the cause of our people in the way it does. I bow to the spirits of Muzimu Mokuru, the great ancestors that have possessed your mind and your being and have commanded you to do this work, which you are doing so diligently. I also bow to your king, who is always at your side, even if we don't see him. We know he's there, Brother Errol, with his queen. Over many years, I have seen the two of you step in Babylon Road. You know, Liberation Road, really. But sometimes we have to admit we're upon Babylon Road, and we have to trample Babylon Road. And it's good to have a king as a queen. It's good, a warrior queen. It's good to have a warrior king at your side. So I'm deeply honored, my dear sister, and I hope that Kanamwari by the grace of the Almighty, what I will share with the gathering this evening will be worthy of the faith that you have put in me. Tendai Mwari.
Tendai Mwari, you know, we know Leader Mbandaka from the previous presentations and lectures and conversations that we had, that we have on our platform, that we will go away this evening feeling as though we have feasted, you know, at the table of greatness, and that we have been filled with knowledge and new information, because, well, our brother Leader Mbandaka has a way of just touching, you know, the spiritual essence of who we are. And that's why, you know, we keep inviting him back. And, you know, we are truly grateful as well for your family, for allowing you to take the time out to be with us on the platforms. We know you have a wonderful big family there, children, grandchildren, who are always all over you, a devoted wife and partner as well. Sister Kai, rise you up every time. We love you all, and so we're forever grateful. We thank you that we are going to be feasting tonight, you know, from the spiritual essence of none other than Brother Leader Mbandaka. So really looking forward to that. I'm going to just welcome our audience and, you know, acknowledge their presence. So if you want to get a mention, just drop us a note in the chat, okay, family? Really want to know that you're in the house and you're watching. And so just want to rise up, Kwame Oboje, who's in the house as well. Baba Marcus Garvey is a great Pan-African leader and hero. Yes, he is indeed. And as Brother Adam Van Sertima was saying, it's so important that we rise up our leaders, our heroes and our shearers, because that's what they do, as if they're the only ones that have got leaders and heroes and shearers. We have so many that they have erased from history, but we're doing the research and we're bringing them all back. Rise up, Sister Ujamma in the house. Says, greetings, Sister Shanice panel, my real African brothers and sisters in the chat, watching us all the way from Ghana. We have Ghana in the house. Awesome, awesome. So we want to rise up Ace 99 as well in the house. Been a little while. He says, hi, if it's about the UK, I'm here. So yes, indeed, you know, it's about the UK tonight. But hey, you know, you should join us whether it's about the UK or not. So we want to rise up Skepmet in the house as well. Rise up, Skepmet. Great to have you now, says Tendai Mwari. Garvey lives, Mosiah lives.
Garvey lives, Mosiah lives. He lives.
Hey, live. Ashe. We want to rise up. Ace 99 says, Marcus, it is said, had no birth certificate. Is that really? Marcus never had a birth certificate. It would surprise me, because you know what? There were so many people, even in fairly recent times from Jamaica, who didn't have birth certificates, or who had birth certificates stating different dates that they were born. But We know he's a man that lived, and he still lives 100 years after he was born. He still lives, beloved.
Yes.
What
Well,
a man
I'll
that
just say to that, my dear sister,
is.
that his wife, his queen, Queen Mama Amy Jakes Garvey, seemed to be satisfied that that was an authentic date of birth. His son, Marcus Garvey III, we call him the son of the prophet, and his younger brother, Julius Garvey, also seem to accept that this is the authentic date of birth of their father. And I think we need to respect that, remembering that he was also somebody's husband and somebody's father. Tendai Mwari.
Absolutely. Tendai Mwari. So, you know, we accept the fact that he was born on the 17th of August, 1887, and that he lived as a giant during those times. Kwame says, yes, until the lion glorifies his history, it will glorify the hunter. For real, Brother Kwame, I love that twist on that African proverb there. And he goes on to say, Tendai Mari, Brother Leader Mbandaka, my mentor and friend, Garvey lives.
Garvey lives. Messiah lives. He lives.
Every time. Local
Let
49.
me say, I just love Brother Kwame. I've known Brother Kwame for a good couple of decades now, and he is just always so pumped up and ready to give of his spirit and his support to anything positive for African people. And I just love him for that. Tendai Mwari.
Likewise, Tendai Mwari. Sending my love also to Brother Kwame Aboje, who is, you know, a dedicated follower of this platform. Absolutely. We thank you so much, beloved. I don't think he's missed a show. And another dedicated follower is our sister Ujamma, who I don't think has missed a show from day one, you know, and to all of our other followers and silent followers as well, because I know there are many of you who are not posting in the chat, but are definitely viewing. We love you and we treasure you for your support. Okay, so thank you, thank you. So we want to rise up S.A. Smith in the house, a regular supporter as well. Great to have you in the house. We want to rise, and yes, Sekmet, rise you up, says, if you have no confidence in self, a Garvey quote coming along here. If you have no confidence in self, you are twice defeated in the race of life. Right Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey.
Let's finish that quote though. It goes on to say, but with confidence you have won even before you have started.
Imagine with confidence you have won the race before you even started. Hence why confidence is so important. Absolutely. Yes.
You remember?
And knowledge himself gives you that confidence. Mm-hmm.
You remember Hussein when he used to start off his race? You knew the result. You knew the outcome. You see, both. You already knew the outcome. Everything else was a formality. If we had that kind of confidence in self, when we come up against the enemy, the outcome would already be predetermined. We had a great team, the West Indies team in its glory days, from the mid-70s to the mid-90s. We beat everybody around the world, and they were terrified of the West Indies team. They thought that we were massive giants. You hear them talk about it even today. And when the test match or the one-day international started, they knew the outcome before the game started. Everybody's just a question of how well would they fare in their defeat.
Imagine. And, you know, that's where we want to get to again. We want to get to a place, family, where we have so much confidence in self that confidence just makes others around us tremble, because they know whatever we put our mind to, we are going to win and we are going to succeed. You know, that's the level of confidence we need to have in terms of science. That's the level of confidence we need to have in politics, in education, in agriculture, in everything that we do. We need to be the conquerors. We were at one time. Just imagine, you know, when those Moors went riding into Spain back in 711 or so, you know, they said that they took Spain within hours. Such was the fear and the trembling about the ferocity of those Africans and the skills of those Africans on those horses with those swords. They took Spain in no time at all. And that's where we're going to have to get to again, family. With an Africated education, you know, that gives us that confidence in self, we will get there. But if we continue with a European Western education that says to us that we are inferior, less than, only have ever been slaves and nothing else, we're going to be walking around with our head down and not getting anywhere at all. We've got another quote, and I'll bring some more in a little while, but I'll just land on this one. Another one from Sekhmet that says, the black skin is not a badge of shame, but rather a glorious symbol of national greatness. Right Honourable Marcus Mosiah Garvey.
Words power.
Yeah. Words of power. That's why I love the man Marcus Mosiah Garvey. He's telling us that our skin, our blackness, you know, I mean, I can mention by Carter, I don't even want to give him that airway right now. But you see how him bleach out his skin, and you see what happened to him skin to him bleach it out? Eh? You see what happened? So those who are following, you know, that kind of madness because of shame, of the beautiful badge of honor that we've got. Mr. Sarafono, look where catching right now. Anyway, that aside though, let's go over to the topic that we've got in hand today. We'll come back to more of the text messages along the way, family. So do keep them coming in. We love to get your messages. The message for today is the rise of racism in Britain. And that's going to be obviously within the context of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, who we've just been celebrating. And I'm sure, you know, it can't have escaped anyone, anywhere. The riots that have been happening quite recently in Britain can't have escaped anyone, probably anywhere in the world. And we're going to have a bit of a conversation about that this evening. And let me ask our brother Leader Mbandaka to open for us, just to set the context about what has been happening, what sparked what's been happening, and for him to drill down a bit more into the story before we go wide. Over to you, Leader Mbandaka.
Tatenda, Midase Papa, giving thanks and praises, my dear sister. Tendai Mari, Marum Kurukuru, Kuzai Muzimukuru, Tendai Mari, Rumbid Zokunamwari, Africa, to the God of Africa be the glory. Royal elders, queens and kings, princesses and princes of great Mama Africa, I bring greetings to you in the most precious, powerful and bountiful name of our motherland, Al-Kebulan, Mama Africa, in the sacred spirits of our most gracious ancestors, and in a prayer for oneness, hope and prosperity for all African people upon the face of Mother Earth. Africa, to the God of Africa be the glory. Kudzai Mudzemo Mukuru, give praises unto our ancestors. Give praises unto our ancestors. Because without them, we would not be here today. It is through the spirit and the mind and the body of Mudzimo Mukuru, our great ancestors, that the Creator chose to bring us into being. And so the lineage of our ancestors remains sacred property. It remains the property, the channel of the Creator through which the Creator does that. It's her wonderful work of bringing us into being. This month, for 31 days, we repeat the refrain, beloved brothers and sisters, the salutation, Garvey lives, Mosiah lives. For this is the month where we honor the life and legacy of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey, in a big way. For this is a month of the birth of the prophet. And so, beloved brothers and sisters, I do want to ground my remarks in the spirit and the word sounds of guidance of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And we are concerned this evening about the rise of racism across the UK. I want to, as a subheading, offer the word sounds UK's recent race riots, the cause and the context. I want to explore with us this evening the cause and the context. But in the spirit of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Messiah Garvey, I want to remind us of his powerful guiding words to us on the subject of race. He says, in a world of wolves, listen carefully, in a world of wolves, one should go armed. And one of the most powerful defensive weapons within the reach of African people is the practice of race first in all parts of the world. He says, put your race first, like all other races do. Papa Garvey says, be as proud of your race today as our mothers and fathers were in the days of yore. Not Y-O-U-R, but Y-O-R-E, meaning in ancient times. Be as proud of your race today as our mothers and fathers were in the days of yore. We have a beautiful history, and we shall create another, he says, in the future that will astonish the world. We have a beautiful history, and we shall create another in the future that will astonish the world. Papa Garvey, in his wisdom, is reminding us, beloved brothers and sisters, that we are still making history. As long as we have breath, we are making history. But what kind of history are we making? Papa Garvey connects us with the brilliance and the genius of our ancestors in the days of yore, and reminding us that the DNA that informed and enabled our ancestors to do great things in the days of yore is still with us today. We still have the capacity to do great things and to make great history. That's what Papa Garvey is saying to us. So we shall create another in the future that will astonish the world. So that the final punctuation mark or the final paragraph in the history of Africa and its people has not yet been written. We are still writing the history. And as Brother Kwame reminded us earlier on, praying on the wisdom of our ancestors, until the lion learns to tell its own story, tales of the hunt will continue to glorify the hunter. Tales of the hunt will continue to glorify the hunter. So let us be writing our own history through the things that let us make our own history through what we do and record that history ourselves. So when we come to talk about this issue of the rise of racism in the UK, the recent race riots in the UK, let us be clear that this is nothing new. Let us be clear that what we are seeing is the unfolding of and the outward expression of the very nature of being of the beast that has had us in the yoke of oppression, exploitation, and degradation for far too long. Let us remind ourselves that we are not witnessing anything new, that we are not witnessing anything unusual or anything strange. So we know, brothers and sisters, that in the last couple of weeks, there have been riots up and down the country, in England and in Wales and in Northern Ireland. We hear that the far right have been rioting against immigration and protesting against immigration and the presence of asylum seekers in the country. We understand, or from the media, we are informed that this is a reaction to an incident where reportedly 3 girls were stabbed to death by a 17-year-old young man. 3 young girls, aged 6, 7, and 9, I believe, were stabbed to death. But what seemed to have caused the rioting up and down the country is false information, fake news that was put out on social media that the person responsible for killing these 3 girls was a Muslim and an asylum seeker. As a result of that, we are made to understand Muslim mosques were attacked up and down the country. Asylum seekers or abodes of asylum seekers have been attacked. But we also hear that people have been attacked on the streets. In fact, someone very close to me, the friend of her niece, a young teenager, was also attacked on the streets. So these are very serious occurrences that are happening, beloved brothers and sisters, that we need to be deeply concerned about. But before I go any further into the analysis of what is taking place up and down the country, I want to home in on the young man who has been named and pictured in the media, let me say, a young man, beloved brothers and sisters, by the name of Axel Rudakubana. Axel Rudakubana, 17 years old. A 17-year-old African youth is reported to have entered the space where these young girls were doing some performing arts and reportedly stabbing a number of them, attacking a number of them, stabbing 3 of them to death. Purely from a humanistic and Maatian point of view, we recognize human suffering. We recognize this human suffering. But we are equally concerned because this young man is of our flesh, of our blood, of our community. We are concerned about how and why he would do such a thing. We want to know and understand what is really behind this highly unusual circumstance. In this country, in the United States of America, we hear reports, especially in the United States of America, of mass attacks and killings on children. It hardly ever is done by an African, and by an African so young, still in his tender years, still a minor. What would have driven this young man, as reports say, to have done something like this? What is his backstory? What do we know about our young son, Axel Rudakubana, if anything at all? We do know, and this information is out in the public, that he had some dealings with the BBC and was involved in a children in need promo video, in which I think he played Doctor Who, but the promo video had something to do with Doctor Who. So we know that he is known by the British Broadcasting Corporation. And we also know that the British Broadcasting Corporation is, to all intents and purposes, an institution of the government. So before this event, in fact, he was 11 years of age when he was involved in this promo video. So we do know that he was already known by an institution of the state, the British Broadcasting Corporation, when he was 11 years old. How far that association went and what was the impact of that association on his life, we don't know. But it seems to me that when these things occur, we need to ask these questions and probe as far as our resources will allow us to unearth the facts and evidence. This is a very young man. We need is vulnerable. We need to find out the truth behind all of this. And as I say this, beloved brothers and sisters, I want to remind us and draw what I consider to be a relevant reference to two young men, one by the name of Michael Adibolajo, the other Michael Adibowale. Two young Africans, 28 years and 22 years old at the time when they reportedly murdered a British soldier by the name of Ldr Lee Rigby in 2013, April or May 2013. I want to say, beloved brothers and sisters, that when that story broke in the news, from the very outset, I was very concerned about what I considered to be irregularities, strange occurrences that didn't add up, didn't seem to make sense. For example, these two young men were supposedly driving in a car and saw Lee Rigby walking opposite them on the pavement. They're driving on the left-hand side of the road. He is coming opposite them. He wasn't wearing army uniform. He was in civilian clothing. Apparently, they were supposed to have seen the jersey that he was wearing, and what was on it was support our servicemen or something, or our armed services or something of the sort. But somehow they were supposed to have known that he was a soldier. And they drove the car onto the pavement, knocked him over, dragged him into the road and beheaded him. And we saw pictures. We saw pictures of a body laying in the road. We didn't see a pool of blood that would be consistent with someone who was beheaded. We didn't see a crowd of people panicking. We saw people just walking around looking pretty normal. And Michael Adebelajo, who was supposed to be speaking someone through the mobile phone of some passerby, who he asked to film him. This passerby was supposedly aware that he had killed and beheaded the soldier and was filming him. And that mobile phone seemed to have been very steady. Didn't seem to be shaking. Or if someone had just hacked someone to death, chopped off their head, and demanded that I film him making a speech, I would be I don't get nervous very easily, but I think I'd be shaking a little bit. I couldn't imagine us holding that camera so still. His hand was beetroot red as he spoke, as if he had just dipped his hand in blood or paint or something red. And as he was speaking, he was touching himself on the chest. But I noticed there was no red finger marks printed on his chest, even though he was beating his chest as he spoke. All of these things made me really suspicious. And then 40 minutes later, whilst they're still standing around, God knows why, because if they got their fill by knocking over this soldier, I don't know how they knew he was a soldier, knocking him over, beheading him. Why are they hanging around making speeches? That seemed unusual. Why are they hanging around making speeches? And then 40 minutes later, the police arrive, they're still there. And there's a standoff between them and armed police officers. And then they attack the police officers, run towards the car with knives in their hand. One of them was supposed to have a gun, but never attempted to discharge it at the police. And these were armed police. Armed police who were trained to shoot a dangerous target, to aim for the torso, because that is the largest part of the body, and therefore you're most likely to be successful in hitting and in also rupturing a vital organ, because the purpose is to neutralize the target immediately. So you wouldn't aim for the head, you wouldn't aim for the feet, because it is a smaller target. You aim for the torso because it's a bigger target and it's filled with vital organs. You're most likely to neutralize the target. They shot both men in the legs. Very unusual. That's not their training. And these are marksmen, or whatever the term is. So in both occasions, they missed the primary target, which is the torso. They shot them in the legs. The next thing was Newsnight. A friend of theirs, or a friend of Michael Adebelajo, came on Newsnight and was interviewed. His name was Abu Nuseba. The brother came and he was interviewed, and he said that Michael Adebelajo has been complaining that MI5 have been pursuing him for several months, wanting him to work for them. And he was refusing to work for MI5, and they're badgering him. Prior to that, he was in Kenya. He was captured in Kenya by the police, imprisoned, incarcerated in Kenya, and beaten up. Beaten up so badly, he said, and abused and violated. He said to his friend, I could not repeat to you what they did to me. It's so sickening. I can't repeat to you what they did to me. His sister was also reported as saying that he was being pursued by MI5. And that, if my memory serves me correctly, that his older brother had worked for MI6. In fact, there were subsequent reports that other family members, including his sister, was approached by MI5 to work for them. So that tells me there's more going on here. This is not top secret, beloved, but these are things that have been reported in the media. And then what happened was, we learned the next day that Abu Nuseba, the friend who was interviewed on Newsnight, as soon as the interview was finished, he was arrested. He was arrested, and some months later, he was charged with terrorists, with acts of terrorism, and given must be 3 or 4 years imprisonment. We've not heard anything more about that young man who was brave enough and bold enough. Why would he come on TV on Newsnight to talk about his friend being pursued by MI5 if he had been engaged in terrorist acts? Why would he expose himself? All of those are questions. I'm just raising questions here, beloved brothers and sisters. And I hope you all understand me. So I'm saying all of this to say that we have to question the backstory of young Axel Rudakubana, 17 years of age. And how did he come to be in that state of mind, if indeed the story went as we are reading it in the media? How did he come to be in that state of mind in the first place? What kind of forces have been impacting this 17-year-old boy's life? We as his community must ask those questions. We can't just abandon him. We can't just take the media's account as they call it, gospel, as the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. We have to probe, we have to dig. So now, beloved brothers and sisters, with that backdrop, I want us to look at this thing called racism in regards to this country, this nation we call Britain, the United Kingdom, or as its official name goes, the United Kingdom of Great Britain. Now, what I want to do is to explore some of the icons of British racism, just to remind us of the nature of the beast that we are dealing with here, right? And that what we are witnessing is nothing new. We need to understand cause and we need to understand context. And we must not lose sight of the context. And the context begins, beloved brothers and sisters, or the context is rooted in what we call the Ma'afa. The Ma'afa. Ma'afa means colossal destruction. The colossal destruction of African humanity at the hands of Europeans. There's also the Arab version of the Ma'afa, but we're dealing with the European version. In particular, the British. We must not forget, beloved brothers and sisters, that we are here because the British invaded and conquered our motherland, captured, in bondage, and enslaved our people for hundreds of years, reduced us to something they call slaves. Now, I'm not going to go into details on this, brothers and sisters, but I want us to remember, it's important, that out of the system of slavery came the Industrial Revolution. They waxed themselves rich, as Queen Mother Moore puts it. They waxed themselves rich off of our backs, honey, she said. They made themselves rich out of our blood, sweat, and tears for hundreds of years, beloved brothers and sisters. And born out of that was an industrial revolution. This is where the wealth and opulence of Britain spiraled through the Industrial Revolution, which was born directly out of the system of slavery. Not only through the exploitation of our labor, but also through the exploitation of our genius, our technological genius. Necessity is the mother of invention. White people wasn't doing any work to invent any technology. We were the ones who were doing the work. We were the technology. African bodies were the technology. And through applying our intelligence in order to make the labor easier, we develop technological devices to make the labor easier. And by developing technological devices, that's where the machinery that gave rise to the Industrial Revolution was invented, beloved brothers and sisters. That was the source of wealth for Britain, for Europe, for the United States of America. I want to remind us of the Royal African Company. The Royal African Company, which was owned effectively by the monarchy, the royal family, in partnership with the City of London. The City of London, beloved brothers and sisters, which is the commercial center of this country. In fact, it's the commercial center of the world now. So the City of London and the royal family were enriched, and that this so-called Royal African Company, and the name Royal tells you who it belongs to. The Royal African Company, beloved brothers and sisters, shipped more Africans out of Africa into slavery than any other company in the world. Let's factor that in. The relevance of this is the system of slavery. The philosophy, the mythology around slavery was born out of, around racism was born out of the enslavement of African people, because that enslavement had to be justified. And it was justified through pseudoscientific ideas, through religious ideas, through political ideas, through social ideas that were invented to preserve the integrity of Europeans as they heaped all of this viciousness and wickedness on African people. So they had to say that African people were not really human beings. Because if we were human beings, what would that make them? See, they had to reduce us to something lower than the lowest creature on the planet to justify the way they treated us. I hope that makes sense, beloved brothers and sisters. Then came the system of colonialism. Understand, beloved brothers and sisters, that this system of colonialism was not an ending of enslavement of African people, but an upgrading of the system of enslavement of African people to a more sophisticated system. We could define the system of slavery as private industry, private enterprise, in that individual Europeans could, quote unquote, own individual Africans, could claim to own individual Africans as though we were property, as though we were a piece of technology. The ending of slavery and the replacement of the system of colonialism meant that the British government could now own the land. Instead of Africans being taken from Africa, taken from the land was now taken from Africans. Does that make sense, beloved brothers and sisters? So under the system of slavery, we were taken from the land. Under the system of colonialism, the land was taken from us. So we're still on the land, but the land is taken from us. The system of slavery, we were taken through ships. Some of them were private companies. Some of them were ships owned by governments. And we were so-called sold to individuals who could claim that they own us. Now, the nation of Britain stealing our land from under our feet becomes the owner of the land and everything thereon. So we become the property of the British government. This colonization of African territory is what gave, in a large part, Britain its empire, its seat of power. So the source of wealth and the seat of power is amassed on the oppression, the exploitation, and the degradation of Africa and its people. I want us to understand that that situation still exists today, that the source of its power, the seat of power, and the source of wealth is still rested on the oppression, the exploitation, and degradation of Africa and its people. And that's why the system of racism, which is the oppression, the racial oppression of our people, the perpetual racial oppression of our people, is vitally important. This is why, beloved brothers and sisters, before we talk about these white redneck, big fat white half-drunk rednecks out on the street protesting and doing what they're doing, remind yourselves that what they are spouting, the racist ranting that they're doing, is the philosophy upon which Britain built its empire. It is the philosophy upon which Britain built its industrial revolution. Its wealth and its power is born out of the oppression and degradation of Africa and its people. So what these white rednecks are expressing today is coming out of the very DNA of British culture. We need to understand this, brothers and sisters. Very, very important. Then we need to really understand the next phase. The next phase of oppression, which is a very sophisticated phase that eludes so many of us. After the system, after slavery was abolished, and it was never really abolished, it was updated and upgraded. Remember I said that, to more sophisticated dimensions. But after it was so-called, after the announcement of the abolition of, first of all, the so-called abolition of the slave trade in 1807, and then the abolition of slavery, 1833, when it was announced to take, to commence in 1834, Mosiah 1834, after 6 years of apprenticeship. You understand this, brothers and sisters, after 6 years of apprenticeship. I won't go into the detail of that. If you want to bring that back to me, I'll explain, I'll break that down a little bit further. But just show you how deceitful these people are. So it was an abolition that wasn't an abolition. We must serve, continue to serve an apprenticeship. Yeah? Of course, our ancestors rose up kicked against it and made it impossible for the system of apprenticeship to work over the 6 years. And then they had to formally, in letter, end the system of slavery, the British, that is, in 1838. So then now they had the problem of what to do with the so-called slaves, what to do with these Africans. One of the ideas they had was to repatriate us to certain parts of Africa that they would control, because they were worried about what Africans who think they were free, the impact they would have on their colonies in the Caribbean, the colonies in the the colonies in the Caribbean, what kind of destabilizing impact they could have. This is why the Sierra Leone was created, and subsequently Liberia, by the American Colonization Society created Liberia. It was the British government that created Sierra Leone, returning Africans. But then that wasn't working as well as they had hoped that it would work. And so subsequently, the system, an insidious and vicious system known as eugenics, was born. And this system of eugenics, beloved brothers and sisters, was a result of Darwinism, Brother Charles Darwin, yeah, and his cousin, Francis Galton. Beloved brothers and sisters, the objective of this eugenics system, the term eugenics, was coined by Francis Galton, the cousin of Charles Darwin, remembering that these two men came from a family that was also enslavers of our people. So they had already waxed themselves rich on the system of slavery. They were looking now to create a system that will preserve their wealth and their power, as well as the wealth and power of their nation. So they're working with the British government, beloved brothers and sisters, in maintaining a system that preserves white supremacy. And so the British Eugenics Society, its objective, beloved brothers and sisters, was to create what they call a pure Nordic race. In other words, a pure white race with pure Aryan genetics, yeah, or Aryan genetic pool. This is what the term that they use for the perfection of white blood. And also to eliminate what they call unfit races. That was the objective. That was the objective. I want you to listen carefully now. These are the words of Sir Francis Galton, who is known as the father of eugenics. He said, one second, I do not join in the belief that the African is our equal in brain or in heart. And I believe that if we can, in any fair way, possess ourselves of his services, remember now, this is post-slavery. They're concerned now about how can we continue to possess ourselves of the services of the African and continue to maintain the African in a state of inferiority. The man is saying here, and this is this is a well celebrated intellectual academician in British history. I do not join in the belief that the African is our equal in brain or in heart. I believe that if we can in any fair way possess ourselves of his services, we have an equal right to utilize them to our advantage. He said this in 1957. Then in 1857. Then in 1873, Sir Francis Galton, Sir. So he is a part of the establishment. He is anointed by the king. Understand this, or the queen, it would, no, the king. No. Let me get that right. The queen at the time, it would have been Queen Victoria, the time of Queen Victoria. He says, the average Negro possesses too little intellect, self-reliance, and self-control to make it possible for them to sustain the burden of any respectable form of civilization without a large measure of external guidance and support. It is that kind of gibberish that was used to justify going to Africa and stealing the land from the people. Having stolen the people from the land over hundreds of years, now they were stealing the land from the people, but they had to justify it. Charles Darwin, his cousin and his source of inspiration, the man who is known for social Darwinism, the theory of natural selection and the survival of the fittest. This is a man who spread a doctrine that white people were divinely endowed with superior intelligence and superior capacity that gave them the right, brothers and sisters, to rule over others. He says, at some future period, not very distant, as measured by centuries, the civilized races of man will almost certainly exterminate and replace the savage races throughout the world. The break between man and his nearest allies will be wider. Nearest allies is the ape. Yeah, that's what they're talking about. For it will intervene between man and in a more civilized state, and some ape as low as a baboon, instead as now between the Negro or Australian, they're talking about the Aborigines, and the gorilla. So in other words, to summarize what he's saying there, beloved brothers and sisters, in very convoluted language, is that if they remove the lesser, more savage races from humankind, it will expand the distance between the human race and the animal kingdom. Because the African, being the lowest of humanity, the lowest of the human race, had a close relationship with the highest of the primates. That's basically what he's saying. Now, this is the kind of skewed, backward thinking that informed British consciousness. It continues to inform British consciousness today, and it is expressed outwardly by what we call the far right. But that's the section who has the role to express it outwardly. The mainstream has more sophisticated ways of expressing this. They express it through outcomes in institutions. Every institution in this society has reduced African people to a disadvantage. The educational institution, the economic institution, the political institution, science and technological institutions, housing institutions, the criminal justice institutions, all of them, the healthcare institutions. Our women are 5, 6, 7 times more likely to die in childbirth. This is not an accident, beloved brother. It's eugenics. You have to understand. This is eugenics, beloved brothers and sisters. Then we come on to the 20th century. Most of what I read to you just now is from the 19th century or before. We come on to the 20th century. Britain's favorite prime minister, Winston Churchill, a rank racist. Prime minister between 1940 and 1944, and then between 1951 and 1955. Winston Churchill. Remember, we just talked about the eugenics movement and the British Eugenics Society, and what its objective was to create a pure Nordic race and an Aryan genetic, a pure Aryan genetic pool, and eliminate unfit races. That's us they're talking about. Unfit. That's how they refer to us. What if I tell you, beloved brothers and sisters, that Winston Churchill was an honorary vice president of the British Eugenics Society? This prime minister who was voted at the beginning of the century as Britain's favorite prime minister, or maybe Britain's favorite person of the 20th century, tells you something about the mentality of the majority of the people. Think about it, beloved brothers and sisters. Hear some words spoken by Winston Churchill. We will fight them on the seas. We will fight them in the bushes. We will fight them. We will fight them. We will fight them. The bulldog. That's him. I do not agree that a dog, now remember them don't compare with a baboon and ape and whatever. Just now, Francis Galton and him cousin, Charles Darwin, was still highly elevated in the culture of this country. I'm telling you, this mentality is deeply etched in the psyche, in the cultural psyche. It's deep. Not that everyone will express it openly, but it's deep in the cultural psyche. I do not agree that a dog in a manger has the final right to the manger, even though he may have lain there for a very long time. This is metaphorical. It's not dog and manger I'm talking about, it's we. Right? I do not admit that right. I do not admit, for instance, that a great wrong has been done to the Red Indians of America, the Black people of Australia. I do not admit that a wrong has been done to these people by the fact that a stronger race, a higher grade race, a more worldly wise race, to put it that way, has come in and taken their place. Winston Churchill, Britain's favorite prime minister, Britain's favorite personality of the 20th century, said these words. Winston Churchill, who Margaret Thatcher, the longest serving prime minister of this country, quoted copiously when she became prime minister and throughout her premiership. She loved Winston Churchill as she loved Enoch Powell when he made that rivers of blood, that racist rivers of blood speech in 1968. When he said in a few years from now, the black man will have the whip hand over the white man. Stand up and say that. That's on record. And Margaret Thatcher, Ted Heath, had to sack him, but he had personal issues with Enoch Powell. Enoch Powell wanted his place. He had personal issues with Enoch Powell. They didn't get on. He sacked him over those remarks. Margaret Thatcher came out, this is before she was prime minister. She came out in his defense and said, if you listen to him carefully, you will see that what he's saying, there's value, or whatever words I'm paraphrasing, or there's value in what he's saying. Margaret Thatcher, who was prime minister of this country for almost 12 or 13 years. This is what we have to understand, beloved brothers and sisters. This is not about the far right. It's not about the far right. It's not some fringe element of this society. This is what this society is built upon. The denigration of African people. You have to denigrate African people to continue to exploit our human gene, our genius, our labor, and our natural resources. You have to continue to oppress us. You are with me, brothers and sisters. I'm almost there now. But this is the context. I want you to understand this is the context for the uprising that we are seeing across the country. And don't get it twisted, because you see the police and the far right, the hard right, seem to be facing it off in the public and what have you. Let us not forget that when our parents Some of us will be our grandparents, maybe our great-grandparents came here in the 50s, the 40s and 50s. And when the white racists started to attack us, when the police arrived on the scene, our parents were reporting that the police were supporting the racist attackers in the 1970s. In the 60s and the 70s, the same thing, the same reports. The battle for Lewisham, when 500 British National Front or whatever organization it was at the time came out on the streets to intimidate us. And thousands of people, and you know, yes, some white people was involved, but you know, there were some militant Africans on the street ready to take them on. We would have obliterated them. But what happened? Thousands of police came out on the streets. I think it was 6,000 police came out in Lewisham. And the eyewitness account was that they were there defending the white racists. And when the nation was forced to bring what they call anti-racist laws in, and so white racists couldn't spout the racism the way they like openly. They have to be now more nuanced in the way they express their racism, more subtle. What happened? Many of these white racists, many of these far-right so-called white joined the police force. That's what they did. They joined the police force so they could use, with the backing of the law, beat up and batter and brutalize African people. And that's what happened throughout the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, and the SUS laws and the stop and search. Yeah? These were white racists who joined the police so they can have uniform and they can have the backing of the law to carry out their racist and wicked deed. Let me round up very quickly, beloved brothers and sisters. I want to remind us of Clyde Best. And I think when I did that presentation on Windrush 75, I highlighted the fact that even in football, there's racism. They have to have something now called kick it out. The racism is so ingrained in the culture that we see it in football, we see it in cricket, we see it in track and field. What's his name? Linford Christie, when he won the Olympics, and that the Olympics is another issue we should have time to deal with. But when he won the Olympics, the very next day, the press, all over the press, bought him lunchbox. What's in lunchbox? The man male parts. They were focusing on the male parts. They have a big endowment. And that went on for months and months and months and months. So this man came in the public, broke down in tears and said, look, I've got a mother. I've got children. I'm fed up of this. That's all you could hear about Linford Christie. And you know that's a racist trope. Yeah, the Creator may have blessed us in a special way, but we also have dignity. Right? We don't go around boasting about how well we've been blessed by the Creator, or well we've been endowed. That's an obsession with white people, white men in particular. That's an obsession with them, right? With lunchbox. And that's what they honed in on. Not Linford Christie and his brilliance, his athletic brilliance, but him lunchbox. That's what they call it, right? Just understand that's a racist trope. They knew what they were doing, right? And this man broke down in tears in the public because it was so embarrassing. So especially for his mother to have to pick up the newspaper and see her son being violated in this way. Clyde Best, 1969, when he joined, slipping on what team he had joined. He was threatened that if he takes the field, somebody they're going to throw acid in his face. Just think about that young man having to take that field now to play at his best, having been threatened to have acid thrown in his face. Racism is endemic in the culture, in the very cultural fabric. I heard Professor Gus John once say that it's in every fiber of the society. Brothers and sisters, racism is so endemic, it's innate in the culture that it's impossible. It permeates the educational system. It's rooted, the educational system is rooted in racism, rooted in white supremacy, in the myth of white supremacy. The healthcare system is rooted in the myth of white supremacy and the belief that the African people don't feel pain, right? That's why Black men are reportedly 2 or 3 times more likely to contract prostate cancer and several times more likely to die from it, because the healthcare system is racist. The religious system is racist. When our parents came here in the 60s, it wasn't hard right, far right. It was the minister in the church who was telling them not to come back to the church. Or if they do come, sit at the back or sit in the balcony, right? Or don't say amen and hallelujah because our members don't like it. It was the minister of the church that was saying it. And so it's deep, beloved brothers and sisters. The housing system, it's the same thing. Every institution of the society reduces African people to a disadvantage. Why? Because of the system of eugenics. It prevails today, as it did in the 1800s. It is there designed, beloved brothers and sisters, to maintain a system of global white supremacy. We know white supremacy as a natural order and a natural fact does not exist. It is not real. It is a myth. But it is a global system. There's a system, global system in place that is designed to maintain the supremacy of white people in all things and the inferiority of African people in all things: political, economic, social, health, every aspect of life, science and technology. That's the one they're using on us now, heavily, beloved brothers and sisters. That's why the most eminent prophet in King, and I'm going to round off now, says to us, we must create a race of scientists par excellence, for in religion and science lies our only hope to withstand the evil designs of modern materialism. What we are witnessing is the evil designs of modern materialism. Don't get so distracted by what's happening on the streets. We've got to be concerned about that. And we have to ask ourselves, why don't we have the mechanism in place to deploy a unit to the hotbeds of these racist uprisings to protect our community? Because we should be in a position to do that. We have to ask ourselves that. But we must not lose sight of the real source and the real context for all of this. Now, in closing, beloved brothers and sisters, as I started off highlighting the young 17-year-old, I do not want us to lose sight of what is happening to Axel, his last name slips me at the moment. Young 17-year-old Axel. We as a community must continue to push and probe to find out what is happening to him. Beloved brothers and sisters, I close with the words of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And we are in the month of Mosiah. Remember, this is not the month of August. Tell it to your brothers and sisters. Tell it to your mothers and fathers. Tell it to the children. This is not the month of August, for we are not the descendants of Augustus Caesar. We are the spirit and mission children of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey. We bear his name and we highlight his vision. we highlight his magnificent vision and mission that unfolded in his lifetime, as we pledge today that we are going to rescue, we are going to regenerate and reconstruct that vision and make that vision real. I say to you, beloved brothers and sisters, unite, as Papa Garvey says. Organize now or perish. Rise, you mighty African people, for you can accomplish whatever you will. Rumbidzo kunamwari Africa, to the God of Africa be the glory. Tendai Mwari.
Tendai Mwari, Tendai Mwari, Tendai Mwari. As always, Leader Mbandaka has given us so much depth and insight into the topic for our conversation today. And I've seen that the text messages have been coming in. So if you've got any questions, any points you'd like to make, please do get them in now, and we'll try and squeeze them in before the end of the show today. Leader Mbandaka, there was just, so much that you covered in your presentation today. I mean, first of all, racism, you took us way back, to talk about, the depth of racism and where it's coming from. And, that was powerful and deeply as always insightful. I mean, there's so much that, I could add, and if I had the time, would like to add as well to what you've said, based on some of the research that I have been doing of late as well, because there's so much of our history that has been airbrushed out of existence, and we've been given a single narrative story. And a lot of us, because, that information has been hidden from us, it's just, we don't tend to incorporate that side of the story into, our discussions and our presentations. And it's phenomenal, really, because, where do I start with all of this? Well, first of all, your analysis of the Rigby situation, I've just got a vague recollection of that incident, but, I hadn't heard your analysis of it before, and I wasn't aware of the extent to which there was, so much discrepancy about what happened. And if you're just tuning in, family, you're going to have to watch this on the replay, because our brother Leader Mbandaka broke down the case of this Rigby soldier who had his head cut off by, supposedly had his head cut off. And after you hear what he said, you're going to want to try and find some video footage and the video of that particular incident. And you're going to want to examine it as well, based on what Leader Mbandaka has been saying to us. But it certainly sounds very suspicious indeed. Absolutely agree that, all of what you said there about that particular case, is very suspicious. And it also makes you want to find out what happened to his brother, what happened to these other people that bravely came forward and spoke about the MI5 and the MI6 trying to engage them in these nefarious activities of theirs. And who's to say that that particular incident, wasn't one of the incidences that they wanted to involve, one of our brothers in? Because, we're going to have to do the work to dig deep and look beyond what's on the surface if we want to find out more about, how our people, some of our people, are actually being used by these institutions that we know get up to all kinds of evil deeds and present us as the perpetrators, when in fact, quite often they're the ones behind the scenes actually pulling the strings. So that certainly needs a lot of looking into indeed. So thanks for bringing that to our attention again as well. We're going to have to do the work around that. And then, you talked in depth about how racism is rooted in the Ma'afa, and you gave us a definition of the Ma'afa as well, and the extent to which, these people had actually, denigrated our people and exploited our people during that era of enslavement. And what they tend to focus on as well is the fact that they brought some of our people from Africa to the Caribbean and the Americas and put them on those plantations. But what they often what they don't talk about, and the information is there if we do the research, is that the hundreds of thousands of Africans that they took from Europe and also used to fill those plantations in the America and in the Caribbean. Because what we have to remember is at that time, Britain and Europe was full of Africans. And just so that people, some of the people are thinking, oh, that part of the world was full of Africans back then. I just want to bring your attention, family, not necessarily to Mbandaka, but to everybody who's listening, to a quote from Benjamin Franklin, who's considered to be the father of the United States of America. And we have to remember that the United States of America is a very recent country compared to, you know, the Americas itself. Well, anyway, back in 1751, Benjamin Franklin was quite upset that Europeans, especially Germans, were immigrating to America at that time. Now, hear what he said. He said, why should the Palatine Boers be suffered to swarm into our settlements and by herding together establish their language and manners to the exclusion of ours? So he's talking about a different group of people, okay, who he's saying is swarming into their settlement. Notice the racism in that tone there. Why should Pennsylvania, founded by the English, become a colony of aliens? Who's he calling aliens? Who will shortly be so numerous as to Germanize us instead of our Anglifying them, and will never adopt our language or customs any more than they can acquire our complexion. So he's talking about another group of people who had a different complexion to theirs, who he was fearful was going to come in such large numbers, you know, and overrun them back in 1751. In the Americas, because, you know, it was being used in that way for the plantations. And they were bringing in, you know, people who he was calling foreigners at the time, because who had a different complexion. Some of you might think, oh, Germans having a different complexion. Yeah, that's because Germany, as well as France and Britain and many other European countries, was heavily populated at that time by Africans. He says, which leads me to add one remark, that the number of purely white people in the world is proportionately very small. All Africa is black or tawny, which is brown color. Asia, chiefly tawny, that's brown colored people, complexion like my own. America, exclusive of the newcomers, wholly so. So America at the time in 1751 was wholly brown people. So, and he said, and in Europe, the Spaniards, Italians, French, Russians and Swedes are generally of what we call swarthy complexion. That's people of color, black complexion. As are the Germans, also the Saxons, only excepted, who, with the English, make the principal body of white people on the face of the earth. I could wish their numbers were increased, he said. And while we are, as I may call it, scouring our planet by clearing America of woods and so making this side of our globe reflect a brighter light to the eyes of the inhabitants in Mars or Venus, why should we, in the sight of the superior beings, darken its people? Why increase the sons of Africa by planting them in America, where we have so fair an opportunity by excluding all blacks and tawnies of increasing the lovely white and red? But perhaps I am partial to the complexion of my country, for such kind of partiality is natural to mankind. This is, you know, these are the words of Benjamin Franklin, founder of, who's called the founding father of the United States of America, which is very different from the America itself, which existed prior to that, obviously. But what we can read into that, and there's lots of other quotes and other sources that we can go to back up the complexion of Europe at the time. So what happened, some of us might think, you know, to all of those brown and dark colored people that were in Europe at that time? Well, there are ship logs that confirm that people from those regions were actually shipped to the Americas and also to the Caribbean. But they don't talk about the fact that there were hundreds of thousands of Africans, people of African descent, who were living on this side of the world during those times, and who were some genocided out and others who were transported from Europe into those colonies that they had created in the Caribbean and in the Americas. Now, you know, there's so much to learn about what happened around that era that has been airbrushed from our history, partly why Dr. Winters and I are doing that 6-week program, because we actually go into that in some depth. So when we, you know, talk about the single narrative story that they have given us about all of our people from coming from Africa and ending up in the Caribbean and the Americas, let's also just remember those of us who were already in Britain, England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, who were cleared of that region and in other parts of Europe and sent to the colonies. And so just wanted to add that to that, in, you know, that analysis that you gave about the origins of racism, because that clearing of the land as well in Britain, although at the time, you know, the reasons given for it were for religious reasons, because the religious wars were happening at the time, you know, the peasants who had risen up, the whites who were fighting on the side of the religious people who were warring, they had their agenda. The parliamentarians, they had their separate agenda. And so they had to rewrite our history. So during those dark ages that you spoke about, Leader Mbandaka, when they were writing about us as being the lowest of the low, during those times, you know, of our hundreds of years of enslavement, when they were having to justify it, you know, they were also rewriting our history. So it's just so much more that needs to be said around that, but we don't have the time to do that. But, you know, in terms of how they built their empire, you know, on Offa the blood, sweat, and tears of us as a people, we can't never forget that. You know, never forget that. And you also touched on the, you didn't quite go into it, but you I think you mentioned port. And the iron smelting invention, but just to add that they stole from Jamaica, yeah, and that innovation was what actually sparked the Industrial Revolution, because it was that innovation that taught them how to smelt iron and how they could reuse iron and mold it and shape it more easily, and
that's a technology that we already mastered in East Africa hundreds of years ago.
Absolutely, you know, thousands of years ago. Yes. We've been smelting iron in Africa for thousands of years. Absolutely. So it's a technology that had been brought to the Caribbean by the Africans who were in Africa, and also the Africans who were in Europe were also mining and smelting metals and using metals to create all sorts of tools and weapons and arrowheads and things. So we had that technology, and that we brought that technology with us on the plantation. And so when these people came and saw what our people were doing, you know, they took that knowledge with them. And you can go to the Guardian newspaper and you can do a little search about the Jamaicans who invented what might they call it? Anyway, who sparked the Industrial Revolution. And you will see the names of those inventors. And in there are Africans with both with European names and African names, demonstrating that Africans from both Europe and Africa were working side by side at that time, which is just, you know, another phenomenal piece of the jigsaw. But check that out. You know, as you said, when we ended up on the plantations, we brought all that knowledge and the expertise and those skills and the creativity with us. You know, even after slavery, do you remember in the Americas, we had places like Rosewood and these other towns, you know, straight out of enslavement. And here we were, you know, being able to apply our skills and talents and build our cities. Apparently there were over 100 cities in America that Africans built, that these people burnt to the ground, just as they did, you know, those hundreds of great kingdoms and cities in Africa. I mean, it's just, as you can tell, Brother Leader Mbandaka, your presentation, as it always does, you know, is just like, woo. Let me bring in some of the audience members, because we're 3 minutes away from the top of the hour. So let's just read a couple. So we've got Kujichagulia event in Tottenham, London, on the 17th of Messiah, 2024, from 1 through to 8 p.m. Join the event. Wear your African garments and your red, black, and green. Marcus Garvey lives. Ashe, and he still lives. He still lives. Ashe. Derek Francis, welcome to the house. He says, Shanice, I look more beautiful every time I see you. Oh, thank you so much. Rise up, rise up. Sister Ujamma says, yes, you're right about Jamaica smelting and the Industrial Revolution. Yes, check that out, people. We all need to know about, you know, the fact that it was the Jamaican Africans, or the Africans that had been taken to Jamaica, you know, via Europe and via Africa, who were the innovators and inventors of that smelting that led to the industrial, that smelting technique that led to the Industrial Revolution. Kwame Boje said, these are wicked people with no remorse for another human being. It's a true, you know, my brother, a true. Let's quickly flick up and see what comments we've got in the house. Reparations, yes, Kujichagulia talks is saying reparations now indeed. Rise up, Brother Kamani says, hi, Sister Shanice, every time. Good to have you in the house. Brother Roger says, but Franklin, a Quaker, had shares in the slave trade, and that's why he escaped to America. Yes, I'm sure he probably did. I haven't come across that, but I'm sure it is there, just waiting for me to uncover that as well. And yeah, Kujichagulia says, if you are serious about Prophet Marcus Messiah Garvey and his work, you have to attend a Marcus Garvey event in the local community. Come and wear your colors, and I've given you the details for that. You can rewind to get that, more information about the event. And of course, also remember there's an event happening in Catford as well on the same day, in celebration of Marcus Messiah Garvey, and also celebrating the 40th year of the Big G Galaxy Afri, the only de-brainwashing circle, right station. Rise up, my sisterhood circle. Reminder that we are in the month of Messiah. Yes, if you was here at the beginning of the show, you know, here we are celebrating the great visionary leader Marcus Messiah Garvey himself. So rise up to everybody in the house. Dee, good to have you in the house. Kwame Ossie, good to have you in the house as well. And every single one of you that are commenting in the chat, those whose names we mentioned, those of you whose names we haven't, we apologize for that. All the silent listeners, you know, we welcome you, we thank you for your support. Yes, racism is deeply embedded, you said, in the DNA of British culture. Western culture, absolutely agree. Beloved, we're at the top of the hour, but let me give you maybe 2 minutes, if possible, to land. Oh, take yourself off mute, please.
Tenai
Mwari.
Give thanks, my dear sister, and to all our beloved and treasured viewers and listeners to the show this evening. It's always an honor to serve our people, to serve you, because you are the most important and the most beautiful and the most precious people on the planet. But please remember, we have work to do. We have serious work to do, beloved brothers and sisters, to empower ourselves and to liberate ourselves from the jaws of these beastly creatures that are poor excuses for human beings, the evil and the wickedness that they have heaped upon us in particular and throughout the world in general. I think denies them the right to claim to be human, because no human being behaves that way. Beloved brothers and sisters, if you see me wearing red, black, and green sash, it is part of what we do during the month of Mosiah. It represents Papa Garvey's utterance, when I am dead, wrap the mantle of the red, the black, and the green around me, for in the new life I shall rise up with God's grace and blessings to meet the millions at the height of the triumph with the colors that you well know. He says, look for me in the world when there are storm, look for me all around you, for with God's grace I shall come back with countless millions of black men and women, those who have died in America, those who have died in the West Indies, and those who have died in Africa, to aid you in the fight for liberty, freedom, and life. The spirit of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Messiah Garvey, is alive and well. That's why we say Garvey lives, because he told us, when I am dead, he says he'll come back. If I may come in an earthquake or a plague or a pestilence, or as God would have me, he says, be assured that I will never desert you or make your enemies triumph over you. So what all we have to do is listen to the voice of Marcus Garvey. It's in Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey. It's in Message to the People. You know, so many books have been written. Sister Shanice has written a book on the life and legacy of the most eminent prophet and king. There it is, beloved brothers and sisters. Buy the book. Don't just buy it, read it. Yes. Read it. Buy a second copy. Give it to your niece, your nephew, your son, your daughter. Encourage them. Every African, you know, when I was in, I won't be long, my dear sister. When I was in the church, we used to sing a song, everybody ought to know. Some people don't know. Everybody ought to know. Everybody ought to know who Jesus is. Really, beloved brothers and sisters, everybody ought to know who Papa Garvey is. Every African ought to know who Papa Garvey is. I want to encourage you to watch a video entitled Offa 21, Black Genocide in the 21st Century. You must watch that video, beloved brothers and sisters. I want you to understand this thing called eugenics. This video is over 2 hours long, and it has an abundance of information and analysis that you need to be connected with. So to develop on some of what I shared with you this evening, watch that video on YouTube, Offa 21, Black Genocide in the 21st Century. Must watch, beloved brothers and sisters. I want to close with the words of the most eminent prophet and king, if I may. And I want to read from our Mosiah Daily Affirmation, Affirmation 14, because this is the 14th day. So I want to just share with you Affirmation 14, beloved brothers and sisters, for you to take with you this evening. Tendai Mwari. And it says, it's entitled The Science of Success. Papa Garvey says, the men and women who eat up everything they lay their hands on go to their graves unwept, unsung, and unhonored. They eat themselves into all kinds and forms of diseases, and so we bury them by the thousands every day. But the men and women who reduce life to a science, they live happier, they live longer, they get more joy and happiness out of life. And Papa Garvey demonstrated to us how to reduce life to a science. Study his works, and then let us work together to implement the best of Garvey and Garveyism. And finally, with the words, we have what we call a memory verse for the children. And the memory verse today happens to be, Black Queen of Beauty, thou art given color to the world. Black Queen of Beauty, thou art given color to the world. And that's taken from a poem that Papa Garvey wrote. And all African queens should read that poem, because it will really make you appreciate your own beauty. In the words of the most eminent prophet and king, in closing, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey, as I always do, beloved African kings and queens, we must unite. Organize now or we shall perish. Only then can we rise like the mighty African people we are and accomplish whatever we will. Rumbid sokuna mwari ye Africa. To the God of Africa be the glory. Tendai mwari.
Tendai mwari, ashe, ashe, ashe.
Can I just quickly mention, my dear sister, Drums of Messiah? That's an event that's happening on the 17th of Messiah as well. A number of events happening up and down the community, which is wonderful. I don't have a problem with the clashes. It's Papa Garvey's Earth Day, and we should have events all over the place. So Drums of Messiah, it's on the 17th, Imani Day, Saturday the 17th. It is called by the UNIAACL, and it's at Windrush Square, starting at 5 p.m. So we urge everybody to come, bring your drums, bring your instruments, and it's a universal calling. So there will be replicas in America, in the Caribbean, on the African continent. Drums of Africa will be observed. Drums of Messiah, will be observed from 5 p.m. UK time. So please do come and join us.
Join in, family, wherever you are in the world. Get your drum, and at 5 p.m. UK time, join us in drumming for Messiah. Thank you so much.
5 p.m. to 8 p.m.
From 5, oh yeah, I lot of drumming. So yeah, and I'm gonna get tired, so I'm somebody come empty drum. Rise up, brother Leader Mbandaka. Thank you so much, and thank you, for wrapping today's show within the context of the great man himself, Marcus Messiah Garvey, who lives. He's not died. He's not dead. He's alive, because we're talking about him. So we're bringing life, to Papa Garvey. I love that. Papa Garvey, he's affectionately called by the Al-Qaeda Revivalist Movement team. Yes, he's very much alive. And so we want you and need you people to get his works and to circulate it globally, because, if we start to put into practice the words and the works of Marcus Messiah Garvey, we will rise as a people sooner rather than later. So as we leave you today, rising, in the spirit of Marcus Messiah Garvey, welcome him in, and learn at the feet of the great man through his works, and then apply his works in your daily routines and your daily works. I want to thank you all so much, to all of our listeners who are rising now as a result of the brilliant, deep, insightful words of Leader Mbandaka. We thank you so much. So Tuka Pamoja, good to have you in the house. And we say Tuka Pamoja to everyone who is listening today. Thank you so much, Leader. Rise up yourself and keep rising on the wings of Marcus Messiah Garvey. And to you and your entire team, we're forever grateful. Thank you so much, so much. We appreciate, love you. To the audience, we appreciate, love you too. Thank you so much. Sister Shanice out of here for now, but all being well, I will be black next strong. Okay, so keep it locked. Share the link to this show. Let's get more people, learning and feasting on the words of Marcus Messiah. Bye for now, family.